All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. And now let's continue our session that will be led by our moderator. He is a Deputy CEO, Professional Resources of the Australian Council of Educational Research, ACER. The Professional Resources Division supports the work of educational professionals and educational organizations by providing tools which support practitioners to collect, analyze, and understand evidence of learning and research-based products and services to address identified needs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Deputy CEO ACER, Mr. Ralph Suburn, PhD.
Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum. Om Swastiastu. Good morning. My name is Ralph Suburn. I'm the Deputy CEO of the Australian Council for Educational Research and a member of the Board of Commissioner for ACR Indonesia. I'm very pleased to be here at this excellent conference. And so good to see you all here. It's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome our next keynote speaker. Dr Anindito, PhD, earned his bachelor's degree in psychology from the Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia, and both his master's and Doctor of Philosophy and Education from the University of Sydney, Australia. He was granted the George Forster Postdoctoral Fellowship from the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation and was a recipient of the University of Sydney International Scholarship and Australian Development Scholarship. At the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Dr. Anindito oversees national policies and programs on education standards, curriculum, assessment and books. He also leads several key initiatives in the current Merdeka Belajar systems transformation. And today at this second International Conference on Assessment and Learning, Dr. Anindito will give a keynote titled National Assessment, Quality Mapping and Policy Development. Please welcome him to the stage.
Selamat pagi Bapak dan Ibu semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. And a very good morning everyone. Ralph, thank you for the kind introduction. As I was listening to Geoff, and I mentioned this during coffee break, I think I will repeat a lot of what you mentioned, Geoff, in your presentation, because so much of what you highlighted are the principles behind Merdeka Belajar, behind what we have been trying to do to transform the Indonesian education system in the past 5 years. I was asked to talk about Indonesia's national assessment, but like Geoff, I feel that it's very difficult for me to just talk about assessment, because assessment should be seen as part of an education system as a whole. And changes to the assessment system needs to be an integral part of the overall system's transformation in education. So again, a lot of what I will say will overlap with what Geoff has said about what a learning system should look like and how to build a world-class education system. It might seem that I've been ripping off Geoff's ideas for my slides, but I can assure you that's not the case, although we have had a lot of discussions in the past. But instead, I hope that that will signify that Indonesia is on our way in building a world-class learning system. And I hope to show you that how these ideas have been implemented in one particular education system in Indonesia through Merdeka, 'Merdeka, 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 For those of you less familiar with Merdeka Belajar, let me provide you with a bit of a background. If we say that Merdeka Belajar is a systems transformation, then the first question would be transforming from what to what? We want to transform an education system that is optimized for providing access to schooling. And we've been focused on providing access since the 1960s, 1970s. During the oil boom in the 70s and 80s, President Suharto initiated a well-known program called SD Impres, building primary schools across Indonesia. And by the way, that was a case study that Esther Duplo used to illustrate her and develop her theories that won her the Nobel Prize in Economics, to show the impact of education on economic outcomes. We've been focused on providing access, and we've been successful in doing that. So in the latest BPS survey and the national census, we know that almost 100% of our students, of our children aged 7 to 15-year-olds are already in school. So it's pretty much universal access, except for several pockets of demographic groups as well as regional groups. However, we have not been quite as successful in making sure that once children are at school, they actually learn something that is meaningful and relevant for their lives and their future. So we have a condition where, yes, access has been made universal, but the quality of learning in that system is stubbornly low. Geoff showed you a lot of PISA data. Our PISA scores have been pretty much flat from 2000 to 2018 in all domains measured in PISA. So again, this could be seen as a glass half full as well, because increasing access without lowering the quality of learning is also an achievement. But we want more than that. We want all students to be able to develop, learn, to be nurtured, to become lifelong learners. What do we mean by increasing the quality of education? I will delve a bit more on this because we believe that any kind of attempt to transform an education system needs to have very clear visions. We need to be really articulate in what we want to achieve. And this is what we want to achieve in Merdeka Belajar. We want to create learning environments where every student can become lifelong learners with strong Pancasila values. This is lofty, maybe, but we actually have clear definitions of what we mean by lifelong learners with Pancasila values. Those of you working in primary and secondary education might already be familiar with the notion of Profil Pelajar Pancasila, the Pancasila graduate student profile. It is composed of literacy, numeracy, and 6 socio-emotional competencies. We believe that this is the right balance between 2 things in education. Education in Indonesia, and I believe elsewhere as well, needs to balance between 2 different functions that sometimes are difficult to reconcile. On the one hand, education is about ensuring continuity. It's about mewariskan tradisi. What's that in English? It's about making sure that the next generation has the same values and norms as the previous generation, preserving tradition. On the other hand, we also want the next generation to come up with innovations, to be critical thinkers, to be creative in their thinking. As parents too, we feel this tension. We want our kids to believe in what we believe, to cherish the values that we cherish, but we also want them to forge their own destinies. We want them to be creative. We want them to make their own paths in life, to be critical thinkers, creative beings. These are the two phases of education, the two functions of education that needs to be reconciled at all levels of education. And Profil Pelajar Pancasila, as the goal of Merdeka Belajar reform, is a reflection of how we are attempting to reconcile these two functions of education. So if you can see, among the 8 competencies here, some of them reflect continuity, tradition, ethical behavior based on faith in God. That's clearly a reflection of the kind of good society that we want to produce in Indonesia. We believe in God. We are a religious society. In Merdeka Belajar, what we want to achieve, what we want to emphasize is not on the memorization of doctrines and following rituals blindly. We emphasize the universal values that we can find in religion that underlies ethical decision-making in many spheres of life. So that is why the formulation of the goal is not religiosity, but it's ethical behavior, akhlak yang mulia, berdasarkan iman takwa, based on faith in God. So we want students to have faith in God, yes, the values of religion, and manifest it in their daily lives, to be ethical towards other people, ethical towards nature, ethical towards society. We have global diversity, and this reflects the importance of a plural democratic society in the current context. We want our students to be able to work with, to live with other people that are different from them, to work with, negotiate with people who they might not like, with different values, different ideas. This is the reality of a plural society that we need to help shape in education. Gotong royong, collaboration doesn't do justice to the concept of gotong royong. Yes, this is about teamwork, about collaboration, but gotong royong is also about self-sacrifice, making the sacrifices needed to achieve a collective social goal. That is gotong royong. So these 3 socio-emotional cognitive competencies, these complex learning outcomes, are the ones that we want to instill in all of our students. The other competencies reflect more of the second goal of education, the second aspect, individual creativity and learning, self-development. You have critical reasoning and creative thinking, very obvious. Independence, we want our students to be able to think independently, make decisions based on their own thinking, to self-regulate their emotions, to think about their goals, to be metacognitively aware of the limits of their knowledge, to be humble, to acknowledge that they might not know everything, and to be humble enough to revise what they believe to be true if the facts and data runs counter to those beliefs. And literacy and numeracy last. We believe that literacy, reading literacy, and literacy in mathematics are the foundation of further learning and hence lifelong learning. So this is, again, the formulation of the goals of the reform. Using Geoff's framework, I'm not sure whether this fits, Geoff. Maybe it's in the vision, the goals of the reform. On your right, on the other side of the slides, is the basic approach of how we want to achieve that goal. We want to achieve the goals of Merdeka Belajar through a 3-pronged strategy. First, we need to empower teachers and principals in particular to do their job, which is to develop students' competencies, values, skills, attitudes in Profil Pelajar Pancasila. Second, we need to give them trust yes, we provide them with the main ideas, with the core principles and the tools to develop students' competencies as lifelong learners, but we need to trust the teachers and the principals to contextualize how they use those tools and ideas in their particular context to their particular students. In Geoff's presentation, we can see that there's a wide range of competencies, even in something as basic as student reading literacy within the same grade level. And that underscores the need for contextualized approaches. We in the Ministry of Education needs to be humble again and acknowledge that we will not be able to prescribe the specific answers or solutions that works in every school and every classroom in Indonesia. So that's the second ingredient in our basic approach, is trust, providing autonomy to teachers and principals to contextualize the national policies. And the third one, which is most relevant to this conference, is holding them accountable for improving student learning. So these are the three dimensions of Merdeka Belajar that is, we believe needs to be simultaneously transformed and enacted if we want to achieve the kinds of goals that we want. Let me also provide you with a little bit of illustrations of why these competencies are important in today's world. I like to refer to UNESCO's, what is it, monograph or report that came out 2023, I think. It's Reimagining Our Futures Together. It's a redefinition of the social contract in education. I think it's an update of the previous Delores report in the 1970s or 80s. I think it's a wonderful report. If you haven't seen the report, please have a look at it. In the background of the report, it highlights three contemporary challenges: climate change, technological disruptions, and social disruptions, in particular, erosion of civil society, civil norms. These three contemporary challenges need to be taken into account when we think about transformation and reform in education. And we believe that all three of these challenges highlight the importance of shifting from an education system that is geared towards delivering a lot of content, that is geared towards sorting students based on their academic aptitude on academic content. So asking students to learn a lot of things, to be knowledgeable about all subjects in the curriculum, but with little mastery. Shifting from that to an education system where all students become lifelong learners. So maybe not to delve on each of these, but let me give you an example through climate change. If we think about climate change, core to the solution of climate change is behavioral changes in habits and mindsets at a massive scale in society. And of course, education should play a critical part in addressing climate change, changing people's behaviors in a massive way. So what is required to change people's habits and behaviors to become more pro-environment? Is it enough to get them to ensure that all of our students know about climate change, assessing their knowledge through multiple choice exams? Like if a student could answer a multiple choice question asking them about which of these four gases are not included as greenhouse gases, for example. It won't be enough. Simply knowing about or even understanding about climate change is not enough to change behaviors, because changing habits with regards to the environment involves giving up a lot of conveniences in life that we are used to in our everyday lives. As simple as sorting our rubbish at home, right? It adds some inconveniences into our lives. Simply knowing that that is useful for the environment wouldn't be enough. What is needed from education is not only to convey the knowledge about climate change, but also to touch the values and the affective dimensions related to climate change and the environment. In Curriculum Merdeka, we have integrated these multidimensional aspects of climate change into many subjects in the curriculum, as well as project-based learning in the curriculum. So in the curriculum, we say that it's very important to make sure that students, to help students feel connected to nature. It's important that students feel awed with nature, right? To build the emotional connection to nature that will motivate them to make those sacrifices in their lives for the environment. We want education, we want teaching and learning to help students develop also the values related to climate change responses, the critical thinking, to be able to see how individual actions that seem mundane, the choice of clothes, the choice of food that we eat, is related to whole-scale climate change. It's not easy to see that. So you need to develop the kinds of critical thinking, systems thinking as well. And we want to instill hope and optimism among our students so that they feel that climate change is not just a problem that is too big to solve. You know, sometimes it can debilitate action. It can make people feel pessimistic and apathy. Okay, it's a problem, yes, but we cannot do anything about it. So education needs to also build hope and optimism among young people, to show them, to make them experience the kinds of collective action that they can do that can have an impact on the environment. So again, this is just a way to illustrate why Merdeka Belajar has chosen to develop the kinds of socio-emotional cognitive competencies that we have formulated in Profil Pelajar Pancasila. Now to the how. I mentioned 3 basic approaches, and this fits within a very common framework in curriculum studies, where curriculum is not only understood as the written curriculum, but also as the taught curriculum and the assessed curriculum. We changed a lot of our curriculum policies in terms of the written learning outcomes as well as textbooks. This is what we call Curriculum Merdeka. We also did a lot to help teachers understand and implement, to empower the teachers to implement Curriculum Merdeka in their classrooms. And we have also fundamentally reformed how we do assessment in the education system to be aligned with the other 2 aspects of the curriculum. The main message I want to say here is that these 3 components of the education system needs to be reformed simultaneously. It cannot be done piecemeal. It might seem too ambitious. Sometimes we get criticisms that Merdeka Belajar is much too ambitious. Why don't you take it one step at a time, one thing at a time? Please go slower. Our response to that is going slowly, doing things one thing at a time is the same as business as usual. And the cost of doing business as usual is much too high for our students. What's the cost? It's 70% of our students not meeting minimum standards in literacy and the basic competencies that they need for their lives. And this is why we need to be ambitious. And this is what we did in Merdeka Belajar. Is my time up or? Okay, wait. We use a lot of technology to scale up our education reform because we believe that, again, the policies we set at the national level can only make an impact through what teachers do in their classrooms, through changes in how school principals lead and manage their schools. And for that to happen across Indonesia, this is a system of 400,000 schools, 50 to 60 million students, 60 million students if you count informal education as well, 4 million teachers. This is a massive system. We cannot do it without technology. Right? And that will be evident in the next slides that I will show you. So with regards to curriculum, or the written curriculum, the main point in the written curriculum is a change in how we position teachers. In the previous curriculum, in 2013, the philosophy was, let's prescribe everything, down to what teachers teach, the sequence they teach it, what topics they should teach in the first week of semester, how many times they should do formative and summative assessments should all be uniform across schools in Indonesia. The intention was noble because we have a lot of disparities in our system. So at that time, the thinking was to address these disparities, we need to ensure that teachers do the same things so that everyone could reach the same standard. Right? So this is a uniform way of thinking, but the unintended consequence of that approach is the elimination of teacher agency. It is positioning teachers simply as robots that do the bidding of the government, seen as bureaucrats that do not have professional knowledge and autonomy, and hence that diminishes intrinsic motivation to teach and to improve their competencies. So if we believe that key to improving education is teachers, then the basic idea of having a teacher-proof curriculum policy should also be abandoned. And this is what we've done in Curriculum Merdeka. The basic change is the way we position teachers. Teachers should be autonomous professional educators who are given guidelines and targets, but should be given the autonomy to design their own curriculum and their own lesson plans to reach those common targets in education. Another big reform that we did in Curriculum Merdeka is, this is what Geoff said, reducing the amount of content in each of the subject matter. In some subjects, it's cut down to almost 50%. This was not easy, ladies and gentlemen, because yes, you're perfectly correct, Geoff. Adding stuff is very easy to the curriculum. We get letters and requests almost every month from different ministries, different advocacy groups, saying that you need to put this in the curriculum, you need to put that in the curriculum. If we accommodate all of those requests, then it will be very bloated, and teachers will not have enough time to do their job, to attend to their students' learning. If we want teachers to attend to the process of learning, to ensure that the goal of teaching is not to cover the materials in the curriculum, but to make sure that each student make progress, then we need to reduce the mandated content in the curriculum. And this is what we've done in Merdeka Belajar. And I often say to teachers as well that, look, I know that we still give you content for every 2 years, every phase in the curriculum, but they need to see that as a means to an end. Regulatory speaking, in the law, in the regulations that we've written in Merdeka Belajar, the goal is not to convey the content. The goal, and this is what teachers are held accountable for, the goal is to ensure that students develop the kinds of skills, attitudes underlying lifelong learning. the Profil Pelajar Pancasila. We do not hold teachers and schools accountable to whether or not or how much content they have delivered in the curriculum. We've developed a lot of resources, including change the textbooks. The one on the left there, that is actually an example of one of our textbooks in Merdeka Belajar, in Curriculum Merdeka. Very different to the previous textbooks, where even the font size, you can see immediately the difference. The font size is much bigger. There's a lot of illustrations. There are a lot of activities that teachers can use to get their students to think, to discuss, to reflect using the textbooks. We complement that with a lot of enrichment materials from the public. So the one on the middle there, it's Karya Sastra. What is Karya Sastra? A literature from a novelist, Susilo Tur, quite a well-known novelist in Indonesia. And we also develop the teaching modules to help teachers see how they can use additional materials like this in their own classroom. So the one on the left there, on your right, is a very applicable teaching module that teachers can use and adapt in their own classroom, showing them how this book in the middle can be used in lessons in Bahasa Indonesia or in IPS or in Sejarah, in history lessons and so on. These are other textbooks and reading materials that we developed as part of Curriculum Merdeka. From the illustrations, you can already see that textbooks and reading materials are also carefully designed to instill values. So these are examples of how we embed values of tolerance and diversity in the illustrations that we use in the books in Merdeka Belajar. So on the one on the left, that's a textbook for grade 4 in Bahasa Indonesia. You can see 3 female students, all looking quite differently. Right? One is wearing a hijab, one is in a wheelchair, and the other one has darker skin and a different sort of hair from maybe the friends that they can see in big cities in Java. The other reading materials introduce characters with visual impairment, with Down syndrome, and with autism. So these are, again, the ways we want that we can empower teachers to embed and instill values, value education, character education through subject-based teaching. With regards to the thought curriculum, this is actually the most cost-intensive part of Merdeka Belajar. We have 3 million teachers in our education system. 1 million of them were recruited through processes that are non-standard. We call them guru honorer. They have a status of not honorary teachers, but maybe contract teachers, short-term contract teachers who were recruited because schools needed to recruit new teachers. You know, if a teacher retires in a school, then they would need to replace that person with a new teacher without waiting for the government to recruit a new PNS, a civil servant teacher in that school. That happened during a period of 10 years, and the result is an accumulation of 1 million contract teachers in the past, in 2021. Right? These teachers were mostly underpaid, significantly underpaid. And it's not fair to ask them to implement a new curriculum, to learn new things, to do professional development if they are underpaid. So the first thing that we did in Merdeka Belajar with regards to teachers is to advocate to the other ministries in the government to make a plan to change their status, to make them civil servants, and in many cases, their salaries, their take-home pays are multiplied by 5, 6, even 10 times their previous wages when they were contract teachers. In the past 2 years, we've managed to appoint 900,000 of these teachers across Indonesia. So this is just the very beginning. Imagine 10 years of accumulated problem. We've managed to solve the problem in 2 years, almost solving the problem. Of course, we need to talk about professional development of those teachers, of new teachers, incoming teachers as well, and the training of new principals and school supervisors that we call guru penggerak in Indonesia. With regards to the training of the teachers, we rely on a platform called Platform Merdeka Mengajar. Without this platform, it would be impossible to roll out the new curriculum in such a short time. Within the span of 2 years or 3 years, now 95% of schools in Indonesia, of formal schools in Indonesia, have begun implementing the new curriculum Merdeka. That is breathtaking speed. And this is even before we mandate schools to use the new curriculum. In the regulation, we say that all schools must implement the new curriculum in 2027. So this is way before 2027. Almost all schools have jumped on board implementing the new curriculum. And it would be impossible to do that without technological platforms. So PMM, Platform Merdeka Mengajar, enabled us to convey the training necessary to 4 million teachers across Indonesia. Compare that to only 600,000 training participants that we could reach in 2019 before we had this digital platform. We could already see how this is implemented in classrooms in Indonesia. The curriculum Merdeka, the Merdeka Belajar policies are often criticized by people from big cities, especially Jakarta, mind you, that this is too advanced for the teachers and the students in remote areas in Indonesia. So sitting from nice offices in Jakarta, criticizing and, meremehkan. What is meremehkan? It's having low expectations of teachers who are teaching in remote areas. I've been to a lot of remote area schools in Indonesia. And you know what? Those teachers and those schools are actually benefiting more and better understanding and implementing the ideas in Curriculum Merdeka. So one of the core ideas in Curriculum Merdeka is teaching at the right level. Before Curriculum Merdeka, they were told to deliver the content to the students regardless of the students' initial levels of reading and mathematics ability. Right? And hence you have students in grade 5, 6 who could not read, because the goal was not to ensure every student was learning. The goal was to convey the materials according to the set content in the curriculum. When Curriculum Merdeka came, it allowed them and even encouraged them, helped them to first assess their students' current reading abilities, and it was an eye-opener for many of these teachers to find that, oh my God, a lot of my grade 5 and 6 students are not able to read. Right? And with the help of this assessment and the flexibility provided in the new policies, they could design lesson plans that are tailored towards students' diverse learning needs in their classrooms. Assess curriculum. Now, this is where we hold teachers accountable and district governments accountable for improving learning. Before Merdeka Belajar, we had a long history of using standardized assessment. We have a wonderful team led by the assessment center in the ministry. We have a lot of technical expertise in designing, and Pak Bahrul is part of the history of this as well. So we have a lot of technical expertise. We have a lot of infrastructure in doing large-scale national assessments in Indonesia. We are continuing that. We are building on those resources, those expertise in the current system. But what we changed is the function of assessment. In the previous system, we used standardized assessment to hold students accountable for their learning. But we never used them to hold teachers, schools, or the government accountable. So it was like saying, okay, we will do examinations, we will assess how you've been mastering the curriculum content. If you score low in the assessment, in the exam, then the implication is very dire for you. But it has no implication on us, on the government. We changed that. We no longer hold accountable students. We use the national assessment results to hold schools and governments accountable. So we hold ourselves accountable on how well we are doing in helping students to improve the teaching and learning, especially with regards to literacy, numeracy, and the kinds of learning we want to see in Profil Pelajar Pancasila. So annually, we assess 3 million students, 7 million students in grades 5, 8, 11, 3 million teachers, and close to 290,000 schools, SD, SMP, SMA, SMK across Indonesia. That's a lot of data, and kudos to the team. They can give back the data to schools and district governments in a matter of months through a digital platform again. And this is what we measure. Again, we measure reading literacy, numeracy, and character, the character that we define in Profil Pelajar Pancasila. But we also measure a host of other indicators that we, based on literature, scientific literature, we believe as indicators that are related to improving student learning. Teaching quality, safety climate, indicators of bullying, sexual violence, and so on, inclusiveness climate, and also what teachers do to create the kinds of learning environments that we want to see in the schools. The results are given back to teachers, schools, and all district governments through a digital platform that we call Rapor Pendidikan. So teachers and district officials can just log in to a website, and then they can see the situation, the condition in their schools and in their districts in Indonesia. This is a tool for reflection and for annual planning and budgeting. And adoption rates is very high. Almost 100% of schools and districts have incorporated Rapor Pendidikan into their annual budgeting and planning cycle. So this is changing the nature of conversations that happen when governments, when principals think about how they should use their budget for next year. Now it's about improving teaching and learning quality. The platform not only digests the national assessment results in a way that is easy to understand, it also gives suggestions about possible root causes of problems in their school or districts, and suggestions about activities and even budget codes that they can use to address those problems. So this is a very practical tool for budgeting and planning. And I'll end in this note. We are adding an additional layer of accountability. So before, schools and governments are held accountable based on how well they are improving the national assessment results in their school or district. But the public could not see the data yet. In the coming weeks, we are about to release this to the public as well. So I invite all of you to check out the data once we have released it. We are releasing data from the national assessment as well, representative data from all kota kabupaten, all districts in Indonesia. 3 years worth of data, so it's longitudinal at the school level. Yeah, please give an applause, not to me, but to the team in the assessment center and the policy center in the ministry. They've been working so hard to make this happen. And also to the minister as well. you know, it's not easy to convince ministers and government policymakers to release this kind of data. As you can imagine, this is like opening the wardrobe, you know, your kitchen to everyone to see. But we are very excited for this initiative. Now, in the coming weeks, researchers, the media, and the public will be able to analyze data on the national assessment from Indonesia. And we look forward to engaging with researchers and interested public stakeholders who are interested to make use of this data in advocating and evaluating policy, especially at the regional levels in Indonesia. So with that call to action, I end my speech. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Do we have time for some questions? We got some time for questions. Excellent. Thank you, Pak Nino, for a fantastic presentation. Really excellent. We have some time, a few minutes for questions. So if you think about some questions, put your hand up and we'll bring a microphone to you. Whilst we are waiting, I'm going to start with a first question. You told us about already that Indonesia has already experienced successfully an education transformation. This was a transformation about participation, about basic literacy and numeracy. Now we have a new ambition, a new transformation that you've described for us. With the first transformation, the major solution was building. We need to build a lot of schools, tens of thousands of schools. For this new transformation, what do we need to build?
Yeah, excellent question. Let me think about the answer. Until now, most of the budget in education is still for providing access. Maybe not so much in building physical infrastructure, but it's to provide scholarships to students, especially from poor families, so that they don't drop out of schools. And also to provide subsidies for schools across Indonesia, both private as well as public schools in Indonesia, to make sure that they can run the daily business of providing education. Now, what do we need to do? What do we need to build for the next phase of education? If I had to choose one answer, it would be teachers. And especially teachers' capacity and intrinsic motivation to learn. That would be the gist of it, the key aspect of building the next transformation. If we want students to become lifelong learners, they would need to see their teachers continuously learn as well. At a more practical level, as I mentioned, in Indonesia, we have more than 3 million teachers. A lot of them do not meet minimum qualifications, competencies to become teachers, unfortunately, because of the way the system was set up previously. How do we get them to improve the quality of their teaching practices? The answer is to empower them to become learners themselves, to learn from other teachers, to learn from high-quality materials that the ministry provides, that we help provide from other teachers, other schools across Indonesia. But at the end of the day, it has to be the teachers forming communities of practice within their schools, reflecting on their current state of teaching, learning from each other in a safe environment to improve how they teach their students. With the main question of, okay, what is the impact of what I've been doing to my students' learning? Yeah.
Excellent, fantastic answer. And as you've outlined, if we have a curriculum that supports teachers to achieve these goals, if we have an accountability assessment system which supports them rather than working against these developments in teaching, we need to bring this whole system together. Yeah, fantastic. Do we have any questions from the floor? Yes, we have a question over here in the front row. Any other questions? We can get a microphone over here as well. If you could please just say your name, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, Pak Anindito. My name is Falosa, and I believe that assessment can have a significant impact on the motivation to teach students or to the educational system. And you said that previously one of the changes that happened in this curriculum is the selection system to the university. And as I know that until present, the selection system is already focusing on the aptitude test and literacy and numeracy skills for students. So how is it different in this new curriculum about the selection system to enter the university? Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead.
You're right. It's, that's one of the elephants in the room if we talk about assessment. It's how do we do university entrance or admission in Indonesia. And that is precisely why we also reformed university admission, or the testing that we use to select students, incoming students in universities. If the university entrance is not aligned with the goals of teaching and learning at high school, then what you will get is a dual curriculum, dual burden for the teachers and for the students. A lot of us experienced this personally. We had to study for the national curriculum, but we also had to study for the university entrance test, right? After school, or even during school. Jam ke-0 gitu ya. And this is not simply an issue of inefficiency. This is an issue of equity. Because those students who are benefiting from this system are those who could access the high quality additional tutoring, after school tutoring, right? And those are the students that will be admitted more in the selective programs of studies in university. That is why we need to absolutely realign how we do university entrance exams with the curriculum. We believe that we are heading in the right direction. So in the past 2 years, the national examination for university entrance only measures reading literacy and mathematical literacy aligned with the main goals of Curriculum Merdeka, as well as academic aptitude that is general, quite very broad. Now, this is not a popular idea among university professors who feel that, no, we want to assess their biology knowledge, we want to assess their physics knowledge and so on, to ensure that they are ready for my class from day one in university, right? So this will be a challenge going forward in the next administration, most probably. But we are hopeful that we can show already the benefits of the change. Our internal evaluation of the data already indicate a higher probability of students from poor families in schools serving poor families, higher probability of being accepted in the selective study programs in university, right? So it is having an impact, and hopefully we can do continuous improvement in this policy as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have run out of time already. So sorry for those who have other questions. There will be more opportunities later in the conference. But I would like you all to join together again to thank Dr. Anindito for a fantastic presentation. A great challenge, as you said to us, this great challenge cannot be solved simply one at a time, fiddling around the edges. We need to set our challenge, set our goals, understand how the system can be transformed to achieve those goals. So thank you so much. Please join with me to
Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ralph Subern, PhD, and also Mr. Anindito Aditomo, PhD. Please remain on stage as we will have a token of appreciation for our speaker for this session. And to hand over the token, we would like to invite Mrs. Mariam Kartika Tresni.